In this tutorial, I'm going to show you the shape tools within Adobe Illustrator. Shapes are essentially the building blocks or the foundation for illustration. We're going to use lots of shapes in this class. It's going to be a little intimidating at first, learning it all, but you want to follow along so that you're successful in future projects because we're going to use lots of shapes. So if you don't already have the starter file open, please go ahead and open the starter file, the one that you see on my screen right now. You're going to use this starter file to follow along with me. You learn by doing, not by watching, okay? A couple quick tips. You want to make sure, if you're looking at layers over here on the right, we have a guides layer. That's the template of everything that I drew. And then you have a drawing layer, all right? You'll notice the guides layer is locked so that you don't draw on it, all right? And that the drawing layer doesn't have a lock. That's going to allow us to draw on it. So we want to make sure that we're clicked on drawing layer so it's blue and that it's unlocked so we can draw on it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to practice drawing rectangles, all right? So the default shape tool in Illustrator is a rectangle. If you look over here in our toolbar, after the arrows there's a little thin line and there's a bunch of tools and another thin line. So these tools are essentially drawing tools. And if we click right here, we look at a square. It's a rectangle tool, looks like a square. But you'll notice that there's a little triangle in the bottom right. That means there's tools hidden beneath. So I'm going to click on that. You're going to see a pop-up of other tools, other shapes. We're going to use all these except for throughout the year at some point, except for probably flare. It's awful. But you have all of these. We're going to use several of these in the next set of tutorials. So we want to tear it off. So we have a sub-menu, and then over on the right, little triangle in this little vertical column. I can click on it. It's going to tear it off, and I'm just going to drag it up into this empty space here because we might use some of these other shapes as we go along. First one we're using, though, is the rectangle tool. You'll notice there's an M inside the parentheses when I hover my mouse over it. That means if I were to use another tool inside of Illustrator and tap M on my keyboard, it would take me directly as a shortcut key to the rectangle tool. Right here, the very first one is a perfect square. All right, it's a perfect square. Easiest way to do a perfect square, if you already know the size, and I know the size of this because I made it. It's 150 pixels by 150 pixels. So I'm just going to click anywhere on my canvas here. I'm just going to click with the rectangle tool active. I'm just going to click. And I want the width of my rectangle to be 150 and the height to be 150 because it's a perfect square. I'm going to click OK. Next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that over here I have no stroke. So this is the fill, which is white. The one underneath is the stroke, which is black. I want to come down and click on none. I want no stroke. I'm going to click back on fill, and I want fill to be white. If your fill isn't white, click right there. Now it's white. And we're going to drag this square to kind of match up with the other one. Doesn't have to be exact. Get it close enough. Now we have a square, 150 by 150, and it's white. However, most of the time I just draw freeform shapes. I don't know the specific size. I just want to click and draw them out. So how do we do that? Instead of clicking and letting go and typing in numbers, let's draw this rectangle. Take your cursor up to the upper left-hand corner of the rectangle guide. I'm clicking and dragging to the right. I'm drawing a rectangle. And again, fill with white, no stroke. So that's the basics of drawing squares and rectangles using Adobe Illustrator. In the next tutorial, we're going to learn about rounded corners and live corners in Adobe Illustrator.